Does a narcissist actually know what's going on or what they're doing? Or what happens when the narcissist actually knows or figures out that you're catching on to their toxicity? If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor, a self-aware narcissist that's founded Raw Motivations. I'm the creator of the NARC app, and then also your guide in the 45-day Clarity Challenge at claritychallenge.net. If you like what you see or learn or hear here about narcissism and narcissistic abuse, please subscribe for more. Today, I want to dive into, does a narcissist actually know what's going on? And then what happens when they start to figure out that you're catching on to them, that you actually know the games that they're playing. My goal is to try to help you understand more about narcissistic abuse and know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The craziness that you're going through, the feeling of feeling trapped, of not knowing how to escape that toxic person, is possible to be able to have the light at the end of the tunnel to get free. So many times people are stuck in a trauma bond, which is like Stockholm syndrome. The idea of like mentally, you know, this person is toxic or this person is not beneficial in your life, but emotionally and physically, you want to go back to them. And as a result, you keep going through this cycle and you're not sure how to get out. One of the popular questions that people normally ask is, does a narcissist actually know what they're doing? Do they actually know that they're narcissists? Well, oftentimes narcissists have no clue that they're a narcissist and have no clue what that word even is. For me, growing up, there was a huge part that I had no idea about narcissism, about mental health, about different pieces of that. And as a result, when it got to the place that I finally became to acknowledge the stuff that I was dealing with and was able to say, this is actually the label that fits. Like I was able to weed out a lot of other things in my growth journey. I was able to get into therapy, like get diagnosed, to get to the place of saying like, this is actually what I struggle with. There was a piece of me that felt a little bit of relief. It felt a little bit of relief because I was like, this is actually the problem. You see, I knew that there was something different about me growing up. I knew that I connected with people differently. I connected with relationships differently. I had different levels of empathy and emotion and care for other people than other people normally would. I didn't have those regular levels. And so as a result, I'm going through life being like, I don't know why I feel like an outcast. I don't know why I feel like something's wrong. Like, I don't know what is different or weird about me. A lot of times we've seen with narcissists that they typically know that something is different. And as a result, you normally see a change happen around certain people. Maybe this is someone in their job or work environment. Maybe this is with friends or with family or different relationship partners, whatever it might be. A lot of times you'll see there be differences and changes around certain people. For me, I would change around the people that I was with because I wanted to make sure that I fit into whatever aspect that I needed to fit in, to look a certain way, to appear a certain way, to be able to hide the fact that I'm not actually who I say I am. So a lot of times in work environment and home environment and extended family or friends environment, I would be a little bit different. There would be a little bit different shifts and changes in my actions, in my attitudes. For instance, with work, I was very much overt. Was very much like overt, like you either know what you're talking about or you get out of my face. Like I was very much like in your face, get out of my way. We're doing it this way. If you don't like it, it's my way or the highway. Like that was very much an aspect in my work environment. But in the personal life, it was more covert. It was more of like the passive aggressive stuff. It was more of the small little digs to trigger the other person to do what I wanted them to do. Okay, so there's an aspect that narcissists oftentimes know what they're doing is wrong because they know that there's consequences for what's actually happening. There's consequences for their actions. Like if I do this at work, I'm going to get reprimanded. If I do this at home, then I'm going to have to deal with X, Y, and Z. And oftentimes a narcissist will change and morph based on the people that they're around because they know how to appear more acceptable in society. Oftentimes in workplace and family dynamics, there would be different things that I would think like, hey, these are here, but like, I don't think that those things should limit me. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to this piece of, whatever I'm doing, this project, this person, this idea, this thought, this money, whatever me, I'm entitled to that. That was oftentimes like the thought process. But the hard thing was in those environments, I had to be able to shift that mindset to make sure that I was still right. As a result, typically it'd be coming down to the aspect of rationalizing what I'm doing or how I'm affecting or how I'm hurting other people, defending my behavior, knowing that something's wrong or something's weird, but saying, like, hey, I'm actually a good person. Because I have to be able to change that in my mind to be able to hide the insecurities, the shame, and the guilt so that I feel better about who I am and how I'm actually showing up. Well, what happens when you start to understand and you start to realize, one, that you're not crazy, and two, that you're not alone? You start to have your eyes opened up. You start to have your eyes opened up to what's actually going on in a narcissistic relationship. You start to see the truth of the abuse that's actually happened. It's like a light bulb moment. It's like a slow idea of, like, whoa, this actually makes sense. And then you start going through this whole aspect of going through the entire relationship being like, wait a second, this actually happened because of this, not because of what I thought. This was actually this way because of what they wanted, not because it was something we agreed on together. Like, you start to break down a lot of different pieces of the relationship, realizing that it hasn't been how you've been envisioning it. And it hasn't been how you've seen it. And you start to get aware to the truth. Well, what happens when your eyes start to open? The other person, oftentimes, the toxic person, will start to sense it. Will start to understand that you're seeing something different than what they're putting out. Typically, there's the idea of, hey, you're starting to see past the mask that I'm putting in front of my face. Oftentimes, they'll be really, really sensitive to different changes that's happening in that friendship and that relationship, in the dynamic that's happening there. There's a huge aspect of, like, being receptive of, like, oh, this is actually what's going on. And as a result, they start to change sometimes different aspects of the abuse. They start to change how they're actually attacking you, how they're coming at you. Typically, this is when people start getting into a mode of going into gray rock, or going into an aspect of yellow rocking, of making sure to be having some communication, but not a ton, so that they don't get persecuted for whatever communication they have, and they don't get in trouble for not communicating at all. Oftentimes, this is the hard part for people, is as they start to get aware, this is where the abuse oftentimes ramps up and gets even worse. A lot of times it will increase to try to get a reaction out of you. If you're no longer getting a reaction, then I'm going to ramp it up even more so I do get a reaction out of you. One of the things you have to understand is the game that a narcissist plays in trying to get a reaction out of other people. So as a result, they'll continue to push. This is why you have to be careful a lot of times with gray rock. Gray rocking, I normally say, works 50% of the time, because half the time it ramps it up and makes your life even worse. So you have to be really careful and really conscious of what's happening, or the tendencies that the narcissist in your life has towards you. You see, oftentimes, as they start to realize that you're knowing, there'll start to be this aspect of trying to have a game with you, of trying to bait you even more, of like, okay, I'm going to taunt you more with things that I'm doing or saying or acting to try to make you respond or react even more. A lot of times they want to make sure that whatever they're doing, they're taking and projecting onto you so they feel better about themselves and they're able to continue moving on with life like nothing's actually happening. You see, oftentimes a narcissist will be in the aspect of being paranoid about what's actually going on in the world, of actually going on in different threats. They'll pick up on shifts in attitude, in emotions, in energy. And it can get really confusing of, like, how can they pick up on those, but they don't care when I'm crying or when I'm upset? Well, a lot of times they'll pick up on different pieces, but they'll use those pieces to be able to play the same game that they're playing, to manipulate and to control you. Oftentimes when a narcissist sees fully that another person actually sees who they are, sees the toxicness, sees behind the mask, the guilt and the shame that they're hiding, oftentimes this is where they'll start to spiral out. When they start to completely, like, disintegrate either what they're doing and they leave and they go to another person, or they start to spiral out and the abuse ramps up even more. For me, a lot of times I would start to spiral out when people would find out that I wasn't matching up who I was. This would produce a lot of rage. This would produce a lot of frustration of, like, that idea of, like, I don't know what to do, to try to push everything so that people would not focus on me as the problem, but me as the victim. Oftentimes, when you find out and when you know, that's when the narcissist will start to shame you. This is typically where they'll either leave you or they'll try to focus on destroying you. Once you know about narcissism, once you have that power, once you connect with, wait a second, this is what's actually happening, the light switches in their mind and they're like, okay, this person's dead to me because they're starting to hold me accountable. So I need to go find someone else, or I need to get rid of this relationship. Last but not least, a lot of times when a narcissist finds out that you know about them and the toxicity, this is when they'll start to blame you. This is when they'll start to say, like, hey, you changed, you're different, you're abusive, this is a problem. And they start to attack you instead of everything else. And what I want to encourage you is, if you're going through this, going through narcissistic abuse, you need to start getting around a community and you need to start finding yourself. Because oftentimes they will push so much back on you. They will try to destroy you. They will leave you. They will blame you, project on you, all these different types of things. This will happen time and time in the relationship. I want to challenge you to actually look into the 45-day clarity challenge that we've offered. You can go to claritychallenge.net to start seeing and understanding a challenge that people have been going through to find clarity after the abuse that they've suffered, to get rid of the toxicity that's still residual there after being with a toxic person. Oftentimes that confusing piece that makes you unsure of who you are or what you're actually gone through or what even happened in the relationship can be solved as we try to get through and cut through the fog of the narcissistic abuse to find clarity of who you are.